Um, so it seems like obedience, off-leash obedience type stuff is what you guys are looking for, and you got a baby on the way. Is that, if I read that correctly?
Yep,
Yes.
Yeah.
exactly. So, generally she's pretty good about general commands, sit, stay, very treat oriented. But when walking on walks, pulls and directions to go sniffs, when sees another dog, wants to go play with them, nothing aggressive or anything like that. But, generally want to get her a little bit better with the commands.
Okay. Anything else?
She's very well tempered. Like she's pretty chill. She's still playful. So she's still, 3. So we expect that. But she listens when she wants to listen and doesn't when she doesn't want to. So she knows all her commands, but she chooses when to listen to them and when to not. So if we're trying to get her to not pull and we say come or heel, most of the time we're having to drag her away from the situation.
Okay. Is she on any kind of training collar, like a prong collar or harness, or?
I don't know what kind of leash it is.
It's just kind of like, I'll get it right here. No, but no training collar. We just use the generic where we, where we
sure,
pull it tight up there, and usually helps out a little bit when we kind of pull it all the way down.
Okay. Have you done any training yourself?
So when we first got her, she was about a year old when we first got her, we just did generic Petco training.
Okay.
Good
way to put it, generic.
That for about 8 weeks, which was helpful. She got to know us, got to know her. But besides that, we try and reinforce that a little bit on her own, but nothing.
Pretty much just the sit, stay, and come.
Come, heel, the generics.
Sure. Anything else?
She has a little bit of anxiety, just like in general as a dog. So like we do have her crate trained. She sleeps in there. And then when we leave, she is crate trained. When she was younger, like escaped her cage, just was like a Houdini dog and escaped it. Okay. That has lessened significantly as she's gotten older, but probably once every 3 months, she doesn't get out of her cage, but you can tell that she freaked out in her cage. So that would be the only other thing. I don't know if that plays into training, but that's just another part of her behavior that I thought might be valuable.
When she has those moments like that once every 3 months, have you noticed anything, like, is there any rhyme or reason to it?
Not really. It's just,
I think it's separation anxiety, honestly. You can tell, like sometimes we can tell if she's going to freak out because the minute she gets in her cage, she'll shake and she'll just be shaking.
Or panting really
heavy. Yeah. So then we're like, freak out probably is going to ensue.
Okay. But most of the time she doesn't shake or pant when she's in the kennel.
Yeah. Most of the time now she's, very calm. And
she'll hang out there during the day. Like I work from home and I'll be at my desk and she'll be in her cage. So she's very familiar with it and likes it. And at night she has no problem going into it, but it's definitely like middle of the day if we're leaving.
When she's in the kennel during the day while you're working from home, is that her choice or is that you just put her in there?
Nope, that's her choice.
Doors open. She just kind of lays in there, sleeps in there.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So she's still kennel when you leave. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you tried leaving her loose?
We tried once or twice, and she was okay. Besides getting on furniture and normal, dog stuff to do when we kind of leave.
Yeah.
Sure. Is she not allowed on the furniture?
The couch we try and not let her on.
Okay.
But the bed, she's kind of generally allowed on.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Probably the only other thing is, whenever we take her to like a big park or something, that's when her listening skills aren't too great. She'll steal a ball and kind of run away and think she's, playing keep away or something like that. But yeah, I think besides that, that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming before booking this, you did some research on me and like my methods and how to train and stuff.
Absolutely. We've heard a lot of good things, which is why we reached out.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think
Are
you've
you
worked,
referred by somebody or?
I think you've worked with some of my coworkers. So Shayna Bone,
Oh
um,
yeah.
yeah, and then Simona, it was probably her, Simona Rowe.
Oh, really? Because
Yeah,
I feel like there are two different. I'm not sure where Shayna works, but last time I just actually talked to Mona like a month ago or a couple of weeks ago, I think it was.
I think I saw your testimony from her, and I was like, oh yeah. So I work. Well, Shayna no longer works at Glassdoor, but we all worked at Glassdoor at one point. So yeah,
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because the last I think I thought Simona worked at Yelp or something.
she probably did when she had worked with you, and now she's at Glassdoor.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, because they're completely like at different times of my career or whatever. But yeah, I worked with the both of them.
Well, you come
So
highly recommended. So
I'm sorry.
you come highly recommended.
Oh,
So
awesome. Uh, so I'll explain my methods and how everything works, and then just kind of what to expect, realistic expectations, you know, and then kind of like the most common questions that I get. Okay,
Mhm.
so you're aware, of course, I work with e-collar and prong collar, but my primary tool is e-collar. Okay,
Mhm.
and the reason why I work with this tool, and this is puppies as young as 6 months all the way, to like the oldest I probably trained is like 12 years old on remote collar, is the reason why I just jumped to this tool is right off the bat you get off leash control. Okay, because there's three like primary or popular methodologies of training. There's positive only, and then there's gentle leader and prong collar, and then there's e-collar. Okay, so food only is great for puppies under 6 months. It's great for foundational stuff. It's great for
Mhm.
teaching body mechanics. It's great as a reinforcer. However, it falls short, of course, if your dog is off leash or if your dog's in a setting where there's something more rewarding.
Yep.
Mm,
Okay. So even if you walk in with filet mignon, your dog's not going to return to you because it's playing with all its buddies that it
yeah.
plays with once a day or whatever, right? When it comes to gentle leader, great tools, except again, once you remove the leash, the dog learns or knows you don't have control, right? So the heel and the sit, the down, all that stuff on leash can be much, much better. But as soon as you take that leash off, your recall, of course, is still going to fall short.
Mhm.
With e-collar, on or off leash, we're not going to have that problem.
Mm.
Okay. And it's perfectly safe to use. A lot of people call it like a shock collar. Shock comes from a couple of places. One, it's like the positive reinforcement realm, kind of just wanting to deter people from using these tools. Secondly, when e-collars first came out, they only had like 1 to 3 settings,
Mm.
whereas now the collar that I use has 127 settings. So
Okay.
imagine there are three, and my 127 are the same, but I have 124 more divisions, right? So
Yeah.
obviously 1, 2, and 3, they're going to be very high in terms of output.
Mhm.
With 127 settings, I can go 40, 50, 45, 44, 46. I can very much fine tune it to the dog, the personality, and the situation.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So they're a lot more refined now. Also, professional brand e-collars are very much like TENS units that they use on humans. Are you familiar with TENS units?
No.
No? Have you ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Oh, where they do the electrodes on your
Mhm.
muscles. Yeah.
The muscle stimulator?
Yeah.
Correct.
Got it.
Like you can go to Walgreens and go in the back section, and it's called a TNS unit. And it looks like a little bone, and you put it on your back, and it will massage not massage, but like uh, uh, twitch your muscles to either
Yeah.
alleviate back pain or to ease muscle tension, right?
Yeah.
It's the same technology.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
yeah, people think when they come into it, they think it's, they hear the word electric, they're thinking like electrocution, they're thinking electricity, they're thinking like sticking your finger in an outlet. That's not the case at all. They use the technology on humans, okay? And in my opinion, it's more refined because, or it's more carefully produced because the ones that they use on humans, there's still risk of electrocution.
Mm.
There's also risk of electrical burn if not set up appropriately. And if you have a pacemaker, they cannot use it.
Mm.
With the e-collar, I've worked where it's not electricity, so it's fully waterproof, both the transmitter and the receiver. Um, it's just the muscle contraction. There's no current running through your dog's body. There's no risk of electrical burn. And I've worked with dogs that have had seizures, heart murmurs, other types of medical conditions. Again, dog as old as 12 years old. It's perfectly safe to use because it's simply a muscle stimulator. Okay. So with this tool, what we do is we use what's called pressure work. Have you ever pulled up and pushed down to make your dog sit?
Every once in a while, yeah, we've done it before, but not kind of regular. Yeah.
So that's pressure. Okay. You use physical pressure to make your dog sit by pulling up and pushing down, because that's how their mechanics work. So pressure comes in many forms. In training, we have physical pressure, we have leash pressure, we have remote pressure, there's prong pressure, which is the spiky looking collar. If you're using a gentle leader, it's the same thing. Like it goes around the snout, clips to a leash like this, right?
Yeah.
And if you're to pull up, it's pressure.
Yep.
It's some form of discomfort. Okay. So we pair the e-collar, which is a form of pressure, and we layer it in over the behaviors. Okay. So most people, when they do e-collar, they think of it more as a punisher. So like if I say sit and the dog doesn't sit, zap. Okay. So it's usually how people's brains work when we talk about e-collar.
Yeah.
The way we actually do it is, so in order to teach the dog how to turn pressure on and off, we have to expose them to it. So like, for example, if I pulled up and pushed down as I'm tapping on the collar, okay, at a level that would motivate Zona, correct?
Correct.
Zona to want to alleviate the pressure. Okay. So she would give me a sitting position and everything would turn off. Okay. And she goes, oh. And then she stands up, and then I start tapping. I pull up, I push down, I repeat the exercise. She sits down and disappears. Okay. So I keep repeating this. And eventually she goes, every time I feel this, guided into this position, and when I go into the position, everything disappears. Okay. So it starts to condition the dog. When you do this, this goes away. And if you want to avoid it, don't get up.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why pressure is so effective is because no one likes to be in an uncomfortable situation, whether physically, emotionally. If you're ever uncomfortable, your thought process is to remove yourself, right? Or remove the discomfort. So same thing for the dog. So if we apply some level of discomfort and they're thinking, how do I get rid of this? And we help them through it and it goes away, they start to process, oh, like this is how the game works. Okay. So we shape all the obedience or reshape or reteach. Even I get lots of dogs that have either been already e-collar trained or trained on the prong collar or trained on food. It's very common. And in my opinion, it's because it wasn't, if it's e-collar, it's because it wasn't layered in correctly. Because again, most people still think of it as a punisher as opposed to using it as a line of communication and shaping the behavior from it. Okay. Or I get dogs that were trained on food. Like I have one right now who they got the puppy from their brother. And for like the past 5 months, I believe, it's been nothing but positive reinforcement. And it was they hit a very low plateau, but the dog had anxiety issues and overstimulation issues. And the reason is when he came in, everything was yes, 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 food, 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 feed, 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 but nothing ever told the dog no. So then there was no balance to it. So as soon as we did the first class, like all the training that they had done just like literally just came in, because now the dog had a concept of consequence. Okay. Yeah. So with the e-collar, even if they've had training or no training, or they were training correctly, we can always layer in the e-collar again. And we're using this. So we're using pressure because that's also how dogs learn best. So dogs don't reward good behavior. Okay, they correct behavior they don't like. So like if Zona were at the dog park, like no dogs go up there and say, "Hey, good job for not mounting that dog over there."
Yeah.
And they don't give give each other treats to like reward things.
Yeah.
But if Zona got out of line with the dog, they would nip or bite her. And they would use physicality, or you see dogs posture each other. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where they're kind of very tense and stoic in a way. Yeah. That's also pressure. That's what we call spatial pressure. So for humans, if we get in an argument, we tend to come in face to face, right? We increase that confrontation. So if we have someone who's non-confrontational and someone comes in, they want to back off because they want to take off that pressure. Okay. Same thing for dogs. So pressure is everywhere. Growing up, peer pressure, right? Older kids or kids trying to get you to do something that you shouldn't do by talking to you in a way that made you uncomfortable to try to motivate you to do it, right? Same thing here. So pressure is all over the place, even with driving. You ever been on the expressway when someone's really close to your bumper, right? And it makes you uncomfortable. So you might speed up, you might switch lanes, you might not do anything, or you might hit the brakes, right? It's pressure to make you do something. So it's the same thing for dogs here, okay? Except we're doing it at the press of a button. Questions so far?
My only question would be, are you also, so with the pressure, are you also verbalizing it?
Yes, at a point.
Okay.
So let's say I told Zona to sit, okay, and she sat. It gives me no means of layering in the remote. So even though she may know a sit and a down and everything through food, we would reteach everything using pressure.
Okay.
And then we sync it together with the sit. Because the sit she knows now could be, if I sit, I get a piece of cheese, right?
Yeah.
But if I don't sit, I just don't get the piece of cheese.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we layer in the remote because then if I would have to then keep putting her in a situation where I would say sit, she wouldn't do it, and then I would use the remote, but that would be more of a punisher.
Got it.
Right? As opposed to reshaping everything, reteaching it with pressure, and her going like, hey, like this is new. So it's like teaching her sit in a different language.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And then we tie them together for her.
Okay.
Other questions?
You might be getting to this. Actually, keep going.
Let me think here. So the e-collar and how it works. So the reason why it's so effective is because, like I mentioned, dogs are physical animals, right? If they get out of line, they nip and bite each other, even if they don't know each other, right? So here with the remote, it's a means of physicality. So I like to call it bite on a button. And I can really, again, shape or kind of nuance that bite according to what setting I have it on, from 0 to 127 in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127, right? Every dog's number is different. Your dog's personality type, your dog's size, your dog's breed, none of that stuff matters, okay? What matters is your dog and how they perceive the collar. So I can have 2 Rottweilers, and one can be on 85 out of 127, and one could be on 18. Okay. Same size, same breed, but different sensitivities. Okay. It has nothing to do with the breed or anything like that. It's just how we perceive it. Okay. And humans are actually the same way with the electrode stuff. Some people are very sensitive to it and they hate it. And other people are like super resilient. They're like, yeah, it's fine. Like it just twitched my muscle not much. Right.
Yeah. I'm very sensitive to those.
Yeah. So, and I get dogs that are very sweet, right? Very, very sweet, very friendly, seemingly soft dogs, very tough to the collar. Okay. So, because people, I get it all the time. They're like, oh, my dog's so sweet. Like they're going to be super low on the collar. I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure that out once we start.
Okay.
So the first thing that we always teach is heel. Okay. Almost always, I'm going to teach the heel first. So when you put an e-collar on a dog and you press the button and you have connection, you're most likely going to see Zona walk away. Okay. Because a dog's first instinct typically is flight response. Okay. So it makes her move. So we use heel, which is a walking behavior, right, to teach the dog how it turns on and how it turns off. Okay. So the reason why we do this is heel, one, fixes a lot of behavioral problems. Okay. Like 70 to 80% of problems, whenever people come in, most of that stuff is just fixed through heel. Okay. Because of discipline. It helps dogs learn how to turn off. So when I get dogs with overstimulation issues where they're constantly on go because they don't know how to turn off, it helps them learn how to focus and then just chill. That's good. 3, because e-collar makes dogs move, heel is a moving behavior. So it allows the dog to express the need to move while also teaching them what to do. Okay. So if you talk to any trainer who really knows what they're doing, the first thing that they're almost always going to teach is going to be leash walking. Okay. So are you guys familiar with Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer? He used to have a show years ago. No, he was pretty famous. He's got a number of different shows now, but the first thing he'd always do with dogs is walk. Almost always, you would see him come in and walk the dog first, because he would put in structure and he'd exercise the dog and burn off some energy. But mainly it was because he was putting structure, rules, and discipline on the dog while also exercising them. So it wasn't like a free for all.
Yeah.
You know, because I get people that walk their dog. I have a lady that walks her dogs like 3 hours a day. You know, and she's like, the dogs have constant energy. I'm like, because they're just unstructured walks. You just walk them and they just do whatever they want, as opposed to them having to focus and having a kind of purpose of point A to point B, back to A, you know?
Probably help her on walks. Because we take her, she probably gets 3 to 5 miles every day. And it's definitely, she gets distracted so easily, where she just wants to sniff everything and we're constantly pulling her back. So to have that structure will be key.
Yes. And it allows you to do even more because you're not having to fight her so much.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not against dog sniffing and stuff, but when I give them permission. You know, so my dogs typically, you know, we'll start a walk, they'll get like a 5-minute break to pee, poop, get it out the way, then we go, and we might be 30 minutes nonstop, and then maybe we get to a park and I go, okay, break, and they can run around off leash and do their doggy thing, and I'll call them back after 5-10 minutes, and then we walk another 30 minutes home, and then another 5-minute break before we go inside, and then we're good, you know. So, and you can divide it up however you like. That's just like my personal preference on structure. And sometimes we just do 5-minute potty break and hour-long walk and back, and 5-minute potty break at the end, and we're back inside. You know, the whole sniffing thing for dogs, again, I'm not against it, but people guilt themselves into it. Right? But the dog doesn't go home thinking like, man, you only gave me 10 minutes, what a ripoff. You know, dog doesn't do that.
Well, what she's learned to do now is she will pee like 4 or 5 times on the walk, because she knows that we think when she sniffs that she's going to go to the bathroom. So like, she's like outsmarting us half the time, where we're like waiting for her to go to the bathroom, but she doesn't have to go now. So that'll be
I've seen dogs fake pee and fake poop.
Oh, she does. She does.
Yep.
So it's one, we can address that. It's not a big problem, but yeah, you know, it's pretty common. So but once you know, it happens so often where people, they obviously, everybody wants to do the best for the dog, right? People love taking care of their dogs, but then it becomes burdensome when you walk your dog and they're like ripping out your shoulder, you know, and you're not wanting to walk them because it's a constant hassle, right? So then once they do all the training and they're like, man, Jesse, now I enjoy taking my dog out. Now I can walk them more. Now I can go to the restaurants and do more stuff, right? So the obedience that I teach is meant to be functional. Okay, so there's 6 commands: sit, stay, down, come, place, heel. Okay, that I'll call like the foundational family pet commands that are meant to allow you to do things with your dog. I think obedience now is looked at as fun tricks or cute tricks that your dog does. Okay, but it's meant to serve a purpose. So the way I approach this is I only teach what you're gonna need, you know. So, and I'll cover all that stuff because that's what dictates the length of time and the cost and all that stuff. Okay. Question so far?
No.
This is helpful.
So
exactly what we need.
I have 6, 9, and 12-week programs. Okay. Think of the 6-week program as we walk our dog, we go to the dog park. The 9-week program is walk our dog, go to the dog park, go to restaurants. The 12-week program is all that stuff. Plus you go hiking, you go to the dog beach. She's going to be off leash in unenclosed areas. You take her to family events and gatherings and you do everything with your dog. Okay. And that's what kind of dictates the length of time that you would need. Because the 2 most important commands are leash walking and come when I call you. Okay. Don't pull me when we walk, and then get over here when I tell you to come back. Right. The others are, in my opinion, kind of superficial in a sense, like for me, like sit, it's like the most used command, but it's actually like the least useful. And I think part of it is because I teach sit as a default. for a lot of the stuff that I do. So whenever we call our dogs, the dogs automatically sit. Whenever we come to a stop and a heel, the dogs automatically sit, right? And then if you reward if whenever you give her something positive, you only give it to her when she sits, she's most likely going to default into a sit when she wants a treat or when she wants her food, right?
Yeah.
So your dog is sitting for everything automatically. So it's like the least useful because it's conditioned by default. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then like the down command is one that's meant for extended use. So like if you went to a friend's house and let's say Zona was just getting a little bit too rambunctious, you just call her over down. She lays down at your feet. She doesn't move for 2 hours, you know? And then there's also the place command, which is very much similar to the down. It's meant for extended use, you know, as long as you want, 2 hours, 3 hours or whatever, but it's more lenient because it's just go to your bed and don't move. Right? So I don't care if you sit, stand, or lay down, just don't get off of the bed. Right?
Yeah.
And that tends to be a client favorite because it is so simple.
Yeah.
It's easy to teach. It's easy to reinforce. So like when they go to restaurants, they'll just like plop a towel down and tell their dog to place so they can enjoy their meal. But they're not having to be so locked in on their dog because it's not very strict. It's just make sure your dog is staying within the perimeter of the dog bed or the towel that you're using. Because if I were to down my dog at a restaurant, if they sat up, you would have to correct that back into a down position.
Got it.
So it's more strict.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what does your life look like with Zona? Like if you could have what you wanted.
We do take her to patios.
Yeah.
So we have one right down the street that we take her to. She's very chill, except when there's another dog around. So like she knows like we've socialized her enough that when she goes to a patio, she goes right underneath the table, she lays down, and we just kind of have to pay attention to if another dog comes in the area, because then that's when she wants to sniff and play with them. We take her to street festivals. We only took her to the dog beach like once last year.
Yeah. And she loves to go to like the parks and run around with other dogs. That's like one of her favorite things, but it is one of those ones that it's like, one, we want to make sure it's fenced in because she's not really good at the recall. Right. And two, you know, if another dog's doing fetch, she goes and steals the ball. So it's like kind of like, we don't want to put ourselves in that position, even though she likes it. So we try and avoid those situations. So we would love to do that. Walk down the street, let her run around for 10 minutes instead of taking her for, you know, an hour walk or something, because she enjoys it and it's a lot more time effective, you know, especially with a kid on the way, and you know, timing may get a little bit tight. So
when are you expecting your child?
Not till September. So that's why we want to now.
Okay, cool. 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah.
I get so many clients that's like the baby just came or the baby's a month away. I'm like, oh, this is like so much work. Right?
We want to make
sure you get ahead of it.
We've been talking about this for a while too, and I think like this just expedited it. Because he has 6 nieces and nephews, so we do take her up to his parents' house. And she's great with them. She'll play with them. But in the backyard, we do put her on like a long leash that we just wrap around a tree to make sure that she doesn't run off, because it's not enclosed. But she's well tempered with little kids, and that situation, we just always try to keep her on that long leash, just because again, without having the fenced in, we don't know if she'll listen to us.
Right. Yeah. And that's just being wise.
Yeah.
So with the e-call, the whole like stealing dogs' balls or whatever, easy fix.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So remote caller can do 2 things. Do this and don't do that. Okay? So a lot of stuff that people struggle with is a lot of the don't do that stuff. You know, don't bark, don't jump, don't bite, don't steal tennis balls, right?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So think of obedience as like a means of, you know, just controlling your dog, like saying something and they do it. But like, let's say if I go to the dog park, like I don't care what she does at the dog park, but I don't want her stealing other dogs' balls. Right? Is that telling her to sit or telling her to even come? Because that's like the most common thing people do is like, come over here, right?
Yeah.
Is as soon as you release your dog, they're just going to go right back to trying to steal that ball again.
Yeah.
That don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? So e-collar allows you to do both of those things. Okay. So there would be shaping the obedience, shaping the behavior, sit, stay down, come, place, whatever you're looking for. And then the don't do that stuff is very simple. I would go over how to go do that with you. But aversives, so e-collar is considered an aversive, are meant to deter things. Okay, so like that's why we get tickets when we speed or if you run a red light. If
Yeah.
you were like me growing up, that's why I got spanked for like doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing as a kid. The aversives to deter things, right? But aversives can also be motivators. So I was raised old school. I was spanked. So like let's say if my mom said don't do that and I did it, well I got spanked, right?
Yeah.
Or if my mom said like do the dishes and I didn't do the dishes, well I also got spanked. So if I wanted to avoid the correction, I would either do my chores or don't do the things that my mom told me not to do. Right. So it's the same thing with dogs. With the aversive of the e-collar, when we teach obedience, it's done differently. Okay, because dogs aren't meant to sit on command. They're not born to do that stuff. That's something that we've created to have control over our dogs. So it would be unfair for me to jack up the collar and remote a dog for not sitting when I've never shaped the behavior of sit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to behavior, you can crack that right off the bat because it's just don't do that. So like if Zona, let's say she goes to the dog park and there's 10 dogs and she jumps on all 10 dogs and 9 of the 10 dogs don't care, but the 10th dog does, they would just bite her. There would be no conversation saying like, hey Zona, I know the other 9 dogs allowed you to jump on them, but please, I don't like that. I find that disrespectful, right? They just bite. There
Yeah.
is no conversation to say like, hey, these are the rules of the dog park. Here's the memo, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So when we apply aversives to dogs to stop things, you can do that right off the bat, right? So like, let's say you had one class on the heel, and then you went to the dog park. It's of course enclosed. So I'm not worried about Zona running away. And you see her running over a dog towards a dog's ball, and you come to find that dog's a resource guarder, right? So he starts to growl and stuff like that. You definitely want to deter her from that situation because if she pursues, it can escalate.
Yeah.
And go to collar for that, right? So I'm gonna bite her before that dog bites her. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And it's not going to kill her drive for the ball or anything, but she can learn in certain contexts. For instance, if you took her to the park to play fetch, she would still fetch in that context. But when I go to the dog park and I go like, hey, when we're here, the balls are off limits, she can learn that differentiation there.
Okay.
Question so far.
No, I think it's pretty good.
So where do you feel like you fall within that range of what you're looking for?
Probably somewhere in the middle, I would say off the bat. Um,
The
yeah.
one thing I'll say, the one thing that I would recommend, especially since you're expecting, is duration control.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So a couple of things to think about is, and these are like, it can go a number of different ways. Okay, so for dogs with babies, if there's not a problem in the beginning, you might see something once the baby starts crawling or walking.
Yeah.
It's super common where I've had families with like the friendliest golden retriever or whatever, and then they're fine with the baby, and then the baby starts crawling. All of a sudden, the golden's growling at the dog. I mean, at the baby, right? Because they're like, and then the owners, of course, get really concerned. And I'm like, what's normal? I'm like, because puppies develop very quickly,
Yeah.
right? Within a couple of months, they're running around, romping around, jumping and biting and barking and yipping and all that stuff, right? And for us, it's months.
Yeah.
So it's like the dog gets used to the baby just not for being immobile,
being there,
and then it starts to crawl. So there's usually some like uncertainty there. So growling isn't bad. Growling is a dog going, what the hell's going on now?
Yeah.
So it's really just time and coexistence most of the time. I always tell people like don't try to do the Instagram pictures with your baby and the dog stuff like that. Just like let them coexist.
Yeah.
And then have your dog give space or whatever. And then when the baby starts walking, again, keep an eye on behavior. But once the baby comes, there's gonna be a lot of changes, right? Less time to take care of the dog. You're gonna be up late, not sleeping as much, and all that stuff. is that's where control comes into play.
Okay.
So if it's like you got to worry about the baby and you don't want to worry about the dog, that's where I go, okay, go over here and do this for the next 2 to 3 hours,
Okay.
right? While I clean up this stuff, or I tend to the baby or whatever, or you do tummy time or something like that, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Because then the dogs will come in while you're trying to lay down with the baby, right? And you don't want the dog in the personal space. Is having stationary control for a lot of families is important.
Okay.
And I'm in the boat of like rather have it and not need it type stuff. And I think you're in the middle is a nice fit for you. Because you would get the stationary control, you'll get the heel, which I think you noted about the stroller thing, right?
Yeah.
What I usually recommend is once you get closer to the due date and stuff, is you start walking her with the stroller.
Okay.
Before the baby even comes around, because some dogs can be averse to strollers because it's so close to them and the wheels and stuff.
Yeah.
So it allows you to like kind of do the training of walking with the stroller if needed beforehand.
Okay.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
You start exposing and stuff like that, and it's just kind of get used to it because it's not the same as just walking your dog, because now you're walking the dog and you're pushing the stroller, right? And then of course recall, the come and call does take the longest to teach. Okay. So the way I structure my program is the first 2 classes are on heel, because it's a 2-part class or 2-part behavior or command. Then I'll jump straight into recall in class 3. Okay, because recall requires you to go somewhere. So you got to go to the park, go to the dog park, whatever, to get your reps in, practice with all the different types of stimuli, dogs, people, scents, balls. If there's any kind of, if your dog has prey drive, working around prey, because your obedience is only as good as the environments you practice in.
Amen.
Okay? So if you only practice in a very quiet setting, your dog's gonna be great in a quiet setting, but as soon as you add stimuli, not so good, right? Definitely. So we want to start getting that process in right away. So we could jump into that by class 3. Okay, class 4 is typically the second half of recall, and then on class 5 we'll start working on stationary control, and then once we hit like class 7 or so, we start just tightening up everything. Okay. So in the first 6 classes, expect to get all 6 commands: sit, stay, down, come, place, and heel. Okay. And classes 7 through 9 would be tightening up anything that the dog isn't getting, or that maybe you're not understanding correctly, pushing it to a higher level, so that, let's say you go to the park and you don't want to have to deal with her on a leash. Well, you have off leash control, so you can let your dog go off leash, right? You're not having to worry about doing all this stuff while having the leash in your hand, right? You can have the baby bag, you can have the stroller, might even have the baby in your arms, right? A lot of stuff going on. I'm like, all right, well, last thing I want is a dog leash in my hand, so I'm going to just take this leash off because you're off leash, or you're not all the commands are going to be off leash reliable, but the recall will be, because that has to be off leash reliable, otherwise it's pointless. And then the heel will try to build as close to off leash reliable as possible as well, and a lot of that's just time. So those are the two that I focus on primarily. When people do the 12-week program, we're shaping all 6 commands to be off leash reliable. Does that make sense? Yeah, but I think you're good with the 9. It'll give you a lot of control without going kind of overboard. Questions about any of that stuff?
And so do we have to decide now whether it's the, which one, or like if we feel like we need a little bit more, we can add on later on?
You can, but so my per class rate is less expensive the longer the program.
Got it. Okay.
So if you commit to 9, you'd get that rate, but then if you want another 3, you would pay the rate for 3.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah. Other questions?
What kind of e-collar do we need to get?
She is, how much does she weigh?
Oh, I was when I took her to the vet last time, and
about 40 pounds.
40 pounds. Okay, and it looks like she's a long-haired dog, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd most likely suggest that you have 2 options. One would be, and we'll send you this information.
Okay.
One would be the Dogtra 2300, and the other is Dogtra Black Edition. One is meant for 70 pounds and under. One is meant for 70 pounds and over. Okay. The reason why I give you the 2 is so we're talking about obedience, which is control in kind of controlled situations. We're at the dog park, or we're at the park. It's a nice day. She's playing with dogs. Nothing out of the ordinary. But I like to account for the out of the ordinary, right? Which would be somebody blows up a firework at the park. That's like the most common thing that happens to people. Is you're at the park, the dogs are off leash, and somebody decides to set off a firework, and a lot of dogs just get a fireworks. Is if she takes off, we're no longer in a state of like, is my dog going to be obedient? Because it's against instinct to move into danger, right? So if she's running away because she's scared for her life and you call her, she's not being disobedient by not coming back. She's just in a flight mode because she's in, survival, right?
Yeah.
Is with the e-collar, I want to know, or be kind of assured that I have the highest, as close to 100% as possible to make my dog return. And that's where power comes into play. Okay.
Got it.
So for the 70 pounds and over, it's more output. So you get more from less, but it's safe to use, perfectly safe to use. I could use on my 8-pound Chihuahua. He's perfectly fine.
Okay.
The other thing you have to account for is, if in an emergency, we have the stress, we have the fact that she's a thicker coated dog, she's about 40 something pounds, she's going to be running, right? So all those things factor in terms of the connection with the collar. So it's like maybe $50 more. And like, I would say, like, it's the highest powered collar. In case of an emergency, I'm not that worried.
Okay.
And
that typically, like, if you're the over 70, I know it depends on the dog, but theoretically you would probably hang out in the lesser ranges, as opposed to if you're the below 70, you'd probably hang out in the higher ranges.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, on the higher power collar, her number could be like 20 to 30. And the lower power collar, her number could be 40 to 50.
Okay.
Right? Okay. It just depends on the situation and stuff, but you get more, from less, essentially. Okay.
And is the collar kind of 24/7? Only when we're training, when we're walking?
Only when you need it.
Okay.
And so one of the most common questions I get is, when does the collar go away?
Yeah.
Okay. So easiest way to explain that would be, do you guys drive?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go on the expressway?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go the speed limit?
Some of us do.
I do.
Some of us do. So almost everybody does not go the speed limit, right?
Yep.
When you see a squad car, what happens?
Slow down.
Right. Because the threat of consequence.
Yeah.
It's called opportunistic behavior. All animals do it. It's part of survival instinct. Okay. So don't feel bad. Yeah. So if there's a pond of water, let's say there's like an alligator in the water, okay, and the animals know there's an alligator in the water, they will not drink water. Okay. You see the alligator leave, they drink water. Alligator comes back, they leave. Okay. That's opportunistic behavior. So for dogs, think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, she's going to behave better. She's going to listen. When it's not present, she's going to, go past the speed limit, if you will.
Yeah.
So same thing for kids, right? If my mom said, "Hey, Jess, you can't watch TV," and then she was like, "Hey, I got to run to the store, watch your brothers and sister."
Yeah.
Don't watch TV, like I could watch TV. I could get away with it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with dogs. Okay. So it has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer. It has nothing to do with the methodology or anything like that. It's simply opportunistic behavior. And whenever you remove a motivator, whether it's good or bad, there's always going to be a dip in performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay? So, because it's funny, because in the dog training world, the two kind of main areas of dog training are always like arguing each other, where like trainers will say like, "Oh, but you always need to use treats." And the other trainers go like, "Well, you always need to use your e-collar." I'm like, we both need to almost always use our training tools.
Got
right?
it.
Because like, would you work if your boss stopped paying you?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Like, no, like you're like, okay, you're not gonna pay me, I'm gonna go get another job, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about the remote collar, however, is if Zona decided not to comply, I can make her.
Yeah.
Okay.
with food, if I'm like, hey, you're not going to get this chicken if you don't come back, she's like, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not a motivator for her.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're always using the tool. Okay.
Yeah.
It's that it's present and it's there just in case. Because again, remember, she could be the greatest dog after you do the training, but then 2 years from now, someone blows up a random firework that you weren't expecting and she's in an
Yeah.
unenclosed area. Again, we're not talking about, it's not just like obedience in controlled when everything is going great, where everything is normal environment. It's also like what happens if something does happen. And that's actually happened to me twice. So my pit hates fireworks. She gets super anxious. She gets super flighty.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, I was walking my dogs through Logan Boulevard. It was about October, August-ish, and it's happened to me on 2 separate occasions. And I was walking my dogs on leash, no e-collar, because I was not anticipating someone to blow up a firework.
Yeah.
Okay. But I get like 2 miles away from my place, and someone blows up a firework, and my pit freaks out. Right. And now she's in flight mode. Now she's anxious. Now she's flipping around like, oh my God, where'd that come from? And I had to deal with that for the next 2 miles back home. And I was like, well, this is why I tell people to always use your e-collar, because things like this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm much of the rather have it and not need it school of thought. Right.
Makes sense. Yep.
Other questions?
No, that was a good explanation. That was going to be my question too.
Yeah. And, if she's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. Maybe early on when the baby first comes around, she's a little bit antsy because there's going to be a change in energy. There's going to be a lot of changes there. You have it, but then once things settle, she's a great dog again. You don't need it anymore, right? Anytime you walk her, you have it on her. Going to go to a restaurant, you have it on her. Going to go to a friend's house, you're going to have it on her. Yeah. If she's really stimulated when guests come over, super excited, and you want to be able to have more control to dial her down and stuff, you have it on her. And then once she dials down, 15 minutes later, you remove it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, makes sense. How busy are you for the next couple of months?
Yeah. Well, so pretty busy.
Okay. Understood.
Maria knows all that stuff. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
So you would have a couple of options, however. Okay. So are you looking to do the in-person one-on-one?
Yeah.
Absolutely in person.
Yeah.
Okay, good. You'll learn more that way. That's what I usually recommend anyways.
Yeah.
Is I have, so my schedule, and you can go by Maria. I have clients, I think she said they're booking 2 to 4 weeks out.
Okay. Not bad.
If you'd like to start sooner rather than later, I do have a trainer. His name's Enrique. He's been with me for just over a year now, if not a little bit more. And this is a case he's more than capable of handling because it's just standard obedience stuff.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to start sooner rather than later, he only trains on Sundays currently because everything's getting busier. Training's getting busier. My daycare is getting busier. Yeah. So now he's one of my best employees and trainers. So it's kind of like I need him to take on cases, but at the same time, I need him to be at the facility, the care stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, delegate where I'm going to, where his time is best used. But if you don't mind the wait, Maria can get you scheduled and stuff.
Waiting.
Yeah, that's kind of why we reached out now, so we could plan for like May and June, or whenever you're available, and do it more so this summer. So yeah, that should work out with with your schedule.
Okay, and by that point, I'll be most likely training in Oz again.
Cool.
So because of COVID, I used to do strictly home to home. Then COVID happened, and then people didn't want me in their home. So then I was like, all right, well, what can I do? We chose Oz Park because it's the busiest park in Chicago.
Yeah.
People, strollers, rollerbladers, like everything is there.
A good one.
Yeah. So we're out there, and we're getting functional obedience in a very distracting environment. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we have bad weather, whatever, I do have my facility. My training space is about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet, so it's plenty of space to still train because my schedule will back up if I push back on things too much. So we try to keep things going. So all the days that we can, we train at Oz. If we get a rainy day or so, we still have my facility. Okay.
Cool.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Do you have any questions for us?
No.
Okay. This was really, really helpful. We're excited.
Great.
Yeah. And if you guys want to get an idea of how it works, we have if you go to our YouTube channel, again, all those sessions are recorded and they're put on YouTube. So if you ever forget anything, or if maybe one of you can make it, but one of you can't,
That's smart.
You don't have to. It's right there. People can always go back to a reference point. It's so everything's verbal instruction now. Okay, so I don't really ever touch your dog.
Okay.
You show up, you have your tools. I coach you through it. So everything's tied to you. You learn everything from ground zero. So it's I already know how to train dogs. I don't need to have more practice. Okay, so you learn everything, and then if you ever need a reference point, you always can go back to your videos for that. If you ever struggle with anything, and I have another client video or whatever that pertains to what you're struggling with, I send it to you as a resource to review. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see all the lessons. Lesson ones are always good to watch because no one knows what they're doing.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the healing one. So you'll see the dog go crazy, and all of a sudden the dog is chill.
Yeah.
The dog is walking next to the owner and stuff, and you'll hear them like, "Oh my God, that was so fast." I'm like, "Well, because we're talking their language." Okay. When you know how to talk dog, the process is very quick. Okay.
Yeah. It's us who need
else?
now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, I think that's it. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
No worries. So Maria will reach out to you. She'll reiterate all the information I provided for you. She'll send you the pricing for the programs and then the calls I recommend and stuff like that. Okay?
Great.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Sounds
If
good.
anything else, you let us know. Otherwise, we'll be in touch.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.